had one at home. I don't know how I could even get the lens to focus these.
Whether you are new to birding or a seasoned birder, looking for migratory birds or traveling to see a rare bird is a quest, a joint effort to be celebrated with fellow bird watchers. When you see that first bird, that first indicator of spring, it gives you a feeling of hope as the rhythms of life continue. Birds remind us that we are never alone, as they provide us with entertainment and a sense of beauty. What amazing creatures! How can we not live to bird?
My name is Naturalist Natalie, and I've been asked to tell you why I love birds and birding. My mom will tell you that from a young age I've had a fascination with birds. I can't say that I cared specifically what species they were at the time, I just liked watching them. And I especially liked when I got to travel and see different kinds of birds along the way. I think what I loved about observing birds while traveling is that more often than not, I went in with no expectations at all. I wasn't thinking a bird should be there because of the habitat or because of the time of the year. I was simply absorbing the environment around me and excited to see things that popped up. For that reason, on many occasions, a particular bird unexpectedly grabbed my eyes and my heart and pulled me in. I thought I would take a moment to share a few of those experiences with you. While on a study abroad trip in Peru, I was afforded the opportunity to spend a week in the Amazon rainforest. During that time, we stayed in eco-lodges in the forest, doing research and cultural studies by day and exploring the lodge and its trails by night. One of my favorite lodge activities was observing the 3 scarlet macaws that every once in a while came to visit the lodge because I took a liking to it. While camping with my family in Maine early one morning, the eerie calls of common loons could be heard rolling through the fog-laden lake. My dad and I went to grab a canoe and got the most incredible up-close encounter with what is now one of my favorite water birds. I had a former career in wildlife rehabilitation that afforded me the opportunity to train with live birds, and there's just something about having a barn owl land on your hand that you can't forget. One day I pulled into work here at Wolf Creek and noticed something moving ever so slightly along the edge of the parking lot. Upon closer inspection, there was an American woodcock doing its adorable little shuffle along the edge of the parking lot. I spent a few days hiking and exploring Mount Rainier. The scenery there is enough to distract and grab your attention. But if that doesn't do the trick, then the decreasing levels of oxygen and highly variable temperature are sure to do that for you. However, I noticed one man taking a picture of what looked like a rock, and I figured that surely he wasn't that carefully taking a picture of a rock. So I took a look, and there was this ptarmigan. My now husband and I took a day trip to Point Pelee, mostly because I had heard good things about it and wanted to go and explore, but also because a day trip to Canada sounded like an adventure. So Border Patrol thought we were nuts, and apparently people don't just go to Canada for a few hours. I know this now, but at any rate, we just wanted to take in a new adventure. We weren't looking for anything specific, but boy were we surprised to get point-blank looks at black terns. If you live in Ohio and have a curiosity of birds, you've probably heard of Magee Marsh or maybe even been there yourself. I can say I've been there several times, and I've seen some pretty cool things just about every time I've been there. I have files upon files of images of things I've seen there, but this one particular picture of a black-burnian warbler for some reason has stuck with me through all of those experiences. It's one of my favorite memories. I was and still am content to simply watch birds. There's something meditative and mesmerizing about watching birds. I love watching them fly and dart and dive and drop and run and bob and dance their way along. It's a quick, easy, and free escape from the cares of the day. I've come to appreciate the various species that call Northeast Ohio home. I see value in collecting data through lists and organized bird surveys. I care about seeing certain species that only move through here in a few weeks during each year. Super neat. But at the end of the day, what I love about birds is that anytime, anywhere, without spending a dime, I can escape to this place where things fly and the world around me becomes still.
My dad started taking me bird watching at the ripe old age of 6. We go to 6:30 a.m. Mass on Sunday morning, then right off to a bird walk that was led by park naturalist Bob Furlong. in the Brecksville Reservation. The staff at the Brecksville Nature Center used to bring out study skins and then have a contest on who could correctly identify the most skins. It was a lot of fun back then. I was also asked to co-lead Sunday morning bird walks at Station Road by Lewis Wellen when I was 18 years old. It is quite an honor, and I have been continuing to lead these bird walks for the past 38 years. As a young kid, the red-tailed hawk seemed to be so regal, powerful, and impressive. It was my spark bird that started a lifelong obsession with bird watching.
We were drawn into birding by the birding breakfast at the Medina County Park District. We'd like to say that we came for the donuts, but we stayed for the birds. We love the birds, of course, plus it gets us outside, and we've built many friendships with other birders. Tim and I saw a live bird today, a pair of Virginia rails at Chippewa Inlet Trail South. They were amazing.
I didn't get interested in birding until I went to college. I majored in biology and earth science. I did enjoy the class, but it certainly was not easy. Professor Fritz was my instructor and one of the founders of the Wilderness Center and an avid birder. He instilled in us a love of nature and a deep appreciation for birds. When the semester ended, it was actually the beginning in our journey in the world of birding.
Hello, my name is Gary Bernard. I'm a retired optometrist here in Wadsworth. As a matter of fact, I'm a third generation optometrist. My bird story starts a little over 70 years ago. In 1948, my father had just graduated from optometry school in Chicago, and we moved back to Wadsworth. I was born and raised here. And we lived in a small two-bedroom home on Euclid Avenue, right near West Street. And it wasn't too far to go over the hill down into Holmesbrook Park. And as a kid, I used to go down with the neighbor boys and we'd catch snakes and frogs and dam up the creek. And I started noticing the birds moving through Holmesbrook Park. And back then, there were a lot more birds available to see than there are nowadays, mostly because of destruction of habitat. And my father picked up on that interest of mine and bought me a little golden book. The golden book of birds, and I would see the birds moving through in the springtime, and I would try to identify them. He would put his hand over the name of the bird in the book, and I memorized them, pretty much the whole book. And that's the way it started a long time ago. It just so happens that one of the first birds that I really recognized down there, and sometimes it's called the spark bird, was the scarlet tanager. You've heard of red-winged blackbirds? Well, this is called a black-winged redbird. A very, very beautiful bird, probably one of the brightest reds in nature. And it just so happens that the May-June issue of Birdwatchers Digest also has a picture of the scarlet tanager on it. So that was my first bird of real note. I've been active with the park for many years, and I put on several bluebird presentations, building nesting boxes with the young children, and I am a bluebird monitor as well, and I've been doing that for several years. Well, I hope this is interesting to some of you, and it's a great hobby. There's a lot of people that are a lot better at birding than I am, and by comparison I'm kind of a piker, but I enjoy seeing the birds, feeding them here at my home, and so I hope that everyone helps feed the birds and helps in learning the identification and nature.
I started birding in college after taking an ornithology class in 2012. In 2013, I started compiling yearly lists of birds I'd seen. Listing is a fantastic hobby, as it has many facets. Listing is not very different from somebody collecting stamps. It's also a little like doing a puzzle as you try to figure out field marks that identify each species, as well as learning which types of habitats different birds can be found in. My spark bird was an indigo bunting. I was amazed to find such colorful birds you'd expect to see in the tropics right here in my own backyard. Birds are also fantastic because there are usually birds to be seen or heard anywhere you're at. So it's a hobby that can be done anywhere, at any time. Any vacation or trip out of the state or country quickly becomes a birding trip, as the species found there may all be life birds.
My interest in birding began when the Friday and Saturday morning Project Feeder Watch program kicked off at Wolf Creek many years ago. Then I attended the first America's Biggest Week of American Birding at McGee Marsh, and when I saw my first prothonotary warbler, I was hooked. I began attending more birding events and planning birding vacations. It's easy to catch birding fever. It's a great hobby to take wherever you go.
I got into birding in 1967 as part of a merit badge project in Boy Scouts. I am a professional chemist and have always been interested in what makes things tick, be it a chemical, a forest, an ecosystem, etc. So knowing what birds are around and how they relate to each other in the environment is something that drew me into birding. I remember buying plastic models of birds at a local 5 and 10, painting them and mounting them in my room. I loved the red-headed woodpecker the best, but they were very uncommon in North Dakota growing up. I did see one in Minnesota, visiting my grandparents, and of course many other sightings at my homes in Texas and Ohio. But my all-time bird of interest has to be the whooping crane. I saw one once in a North Dakota field, where they occasionally stop over on flights to and from Canada and the Texas coast. When I moved to Texas, I made several trips to Arkansas to take the tour to see the birds close up. I am also partial to snowy owls. I have only seen one in my whole life as a youngster in North Dakota. It was sitting on top of a rock pile 50 yards out in a field during a snowstorm. Even though conditions were not ideal for viewing, it is hard to mistake a large white bird sitting on top of some dark rocks, and nothing but a few snowflakes to obscure the view. I also saw a magpie at one of my bird feeders in Colorado, and a screech owl in my backyard when I lived in Texas.
Hi, we're Joe and Linda Scarcella, and we enjoy watching birds, even when it's cold outside. We enjoy watching birds, and primarily because they're interesting. It's very relaxing, gets you out in nature, and it makes you forget about the problems of the day.
And our favorite bird is the blue heron.
Here we are at the feeding station. This is where we have our feeders set up, and this is the view we have from our kitchen window, so we can watch the birds when we're eating. So when we're out checking bird boxes, you don't always find a bird in them. In this bluebird box here, as Linda's tapping on, there's actually a flying squirrel that lives in there, but he may not want to come out right now, so we'll see if we can get him out by just opening the door. And there he is. This is looking out over our pond. One of the things we're involved with is the Nest Watch program by Cornell University, and that box over there is one of our favorite birds. That's where a wood duck is nesting. So we're going to go over and take a look at it. So now we'll take a look, see if Mama Wood Duck is in here sitting on her eggs. So let's take a look. And there she is. So let's let her get back to work and keep her eggs warm, and we're not going to bother her.
My love for birds began when I was 12 years old at a Boy Scout summer camp near Dover, Ohio. When the enthusiastic camp naturalist opened up the world of nature to me, especially birds, I was hooked. Although I fell in love with all of the natural world, birds took the center stage because they are the most visible and colorful forms of wildlife.
Hello, my name is Gary Fowler. I am a master bird bander here in Northeast Ohio. I've been banding birds for about 24 years. I fell in love with them because of my spark bird, the pileated woodpecker, many, many years ago, which took me on the long journey of searching for birds, identifying birds, and so on. And I got a job doing wildlife rehabilitation, and I was getting frustrated because we would fix up a beautiful owl or hawk or warbler or whatever, release it, but we would never know if what we did was good for the bird. And so searching around, I found bird banding and met with a master bird bander, and he took myself and my wife under his wing, so to speak, and we apprenticed under him for about 3 years. And then I got my own master permit back in 2001, I believe. The year after I started the bird band, I was looking around and found a project called Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, which is a very intense research project that at the time was about 500 different banding stations every year in North America, which is now expanded down into Central and South America, looking at different aspects of birds. And it's very, very intense. It's very difficult. And I always figured if I can learn this, I can learn anything. And so we ran our map site for about 11 years, which included, getting up at 1 a.m. to check the weather, going down to one of the most mosquito-infested places in the Cleveland area. But it taught us so much. And in the years following, I've gotten permission from the state to ban barn owls, which is pretty unusual. I've got authorization from the feds to ban peregrine falcons and bald eagles. And there is just something about seeing a bird from 6 inches or a foot away that has ruined us for bird watching. I don't want to see a bird anymore through a pair of binoculars. I want to see it right in front of my face. And we've banded somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 or 180 different species of birds. So we've had a lot of experience banding these beautiful things. And every time I band a bird, it's just more amazing than the one prior to it. They're just remarkable, remarkable animals. Their beauty is pretty much unmatched, and just the way they live their lives, how many of the birds migrate from North America down to Central and South America every winter and turn around and come back up. And for a bird that weighs 6 or 8 or 10 grams, that's still astonishing to me. I mean, even a little ruby-throated hummingbird, which can weigh as little as 2.5 grams, will fly down to Central America for the winter. And that's remarkable. I think humans have an innate enjoyment or want to hunt, and bird watching is basically hunting, but instead of with a gun, you're doing it with binoculars. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people enjoy it. Keep on birding and keep on loving the birds.
There's a real value to getting outside into nature. It's always been a positive outlet for me my whole life. When I was a kid, I practically lived in the woods behind our house. I never would have imagined that I would become a naturalist someday, teaching others about nature. It's been an amazing journey. Birds have always been at the top of my list for things I enjoy most about nature. I think it's the birds' beautiful, vibrant colors, the melodic songs they sing, and just the simplicity of these creatures. Having a rough day and worrying about the troubles that face me in my life, and looking at a great crested flycatcher who looks back and seems to tell me that everything will be okay. Bird watching to me gives me such an amazing sense of peace and tranquility, and a connectedness to something bigger than ourselves.